Hello. Hi. Yeah, I've connected to Zoom. I've connected to Zoom. Okay.
Hi there, Chris. It's Jacques here again. We just spoke on the lady's phone there. Can you hear me
Can hear
clearly?
you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can all hear you clearly. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm fine. I'm okay.
We're still just waiting for one or two people to join the room.
Okay.
I am not the facilitator of the session, so I'm going to step away because I don't want to take over. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that you are all logged in as you should be, which now you are. So
Can you
good
see me? I'm already I've got the camera on. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm connected and everything's good.
screen. We will put you on the screen in a sec.
Okay. But I'm okay now. So worries. The presentation is with Nadine, my colleague.
That's fantastic news. Awesome, Chris.
All
So
right. You're all good.
we're ready to officially start.
Okay. I'm ready.
Right, awesome. Okay, guys, you've got Chris online. So whenever you are ready. I'm just going to mute the mic, Chris, but we are here, you are here, so that's
Yeah,
great
no
news.
worries. All good. All good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I invite you to take your seats and we start off the program. Once again, good evening, good afternoon. You're all welcome to this session. Thanks to those who have managed and withered the opportunities that are out there to join this session, and you're all welcome. We don't take your being here for granted. Just early this afternoon, we witnessed ministers of agriculture across the entire continent having discussions on agro-food system transformation. And I think what was key for me, and as I was listening, was the whole thinking around shifting from agriculture transformation to food system transformation. I think this is fundamental. To many people's eyes and ears, it has not been automatic. And for those who listened carefully during the 2021 Food System Summit, a lot of dialogues and discussions explained the extent possible what constitutes food systems. And with that transition, with the initiative from the International Fund for Agricultural Development, supported with the World Bank and other partners, GAIN, AGRA, and others have pulled together and have worked out a tool on financing flows for food systems, basically to really track public expenditure to different elements of the food system. So this session will basically look through some of the initial efforts that have been done across the world, but in Africa, in Kenya and Niger, a pilot has been made on a tool on how to track and understand where investments are going in the food systems. So this particular session is going to look at what that tool is and what it constitutes with a view of scaling it up and making sure that it cuts across the entire continent. It's very critical in the sense that as we transform, as we move into the food system transformation for the next 10 years of CAADP, it becomes very, very critical on where resources are going and therefore what kind of impact are they creating. So we'll be having that discussion, listening from that tool. Without wasting time, the session is divided into keynote, opening remarks, sorry, where we'll hear from leaders that have been really central to shaping and the thinking of the food systems across the continent, across the world. And then we'll get into the framing, understand what the tool is about, and then have some really dialogue on what it constitutes with a view of having a common understanding that when it's rolled out, it's really understood and therefore is able to be taken up by countries. I will not waste a lot of time. I would just want to invite the following leaders to provide their opening remarks. And if you don't mind, when I mention your name, I would like to invite you up front and take the podium. Dr. Usman Badian, who is the Executive Director of Academia 2033. Usman, you're welcome. Dr. Lawrence Haddad, the Executive Director again. Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the President of AGRA. And lastly, His Excellency Dr. Mayaki Ibrahim, who is a AU Special Envoy on Food Systems, is joining us remotely. I hope, Dr. Mayaki, you are listening to us, and when time for you to make your official opening remarks, you'll be able to be upfront. So let me take this opportunity to invite and start with Usman Badian, Academia 2033, to take the podium here and provide your opening remarks. Usman, you're welcome.
Thank you, Boaz. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here, for taking time to be here. We know how busy this summit is for you. I was just going to say a couple of words on the issue of financing and what we're doing about it. Financing is in everybody's mind. It doesn't solve everything, but you cannot solve anything without financing. It's really, really key. But in a sector like agriculture, it is even more complex because there are a lot of moving parts that require some of this financing. Understanding it, being able to measure it, being able to track it, being able to analyze its effects and efficiency, the returns you have on every dollar could be complicated, could look complex, but that's what you need in a context of limited resources and very high ambitions and expectations from both our governments and our populations. We have understood one thing. You have to be prepared before you need the data that you need. I'm saying it because this tool is about data. Often we think about data when we need it, but it's too late. Being prepared, having the institutional infrastructure, the expertise and the capacities and the modalities so that this data can be generated, can be stored, can be analyzed and be made ready and available. I think that is the contribution from the tool that you're going to be seeing here, presented here today. We have been privileged to be associated with it, and we look forward to continuing to working with our colleagues at IFAD and AGRA, but more importantly, in the countries. As we think about the next 10 years of CAADP, how do we go from the 10% to something that is much more granular, something that's much more amenable to action for the ministers and their governments? We look forward to seeing this tool as making a major contribution. So thank you to those who initiated it, and we're happy to be with you on that. And thank you for joining us in this session today.
Thank you so much, Usman. May I have the honor and opportunity to invite Dr. Lawrence to get your framing comments? Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Boaz. Thank you, Boaz. Excellencies, great to be here. You know, President Joe Biden, in a speech last year, he said, "Don't tell me about your priorities, show me your budgets." And that's very much the spirit of this exercise. It's to reveal priorities that may be hidden, and it's to align them with stated priorities. So if your budgets and your stated priorities don't line up, then you're doomed to fail. Now think about when I don't know how many of you have ever studied economics, but the first thing you're taught in economics is, here's a budget line, and here's two foods or two items that you can buy. Your budget allows you to buy this much of this one and this much of this one. And you've got an ISO curve which shows your preferences. Whenever the ISO curve touches the budget line, that's what you decide to buy based on your budget. Well, for many governments, they don't even have that budget line. They don't have a budget line, a budget envelope for food systems. Food system budgets don't get constructed naturally as a part of the cadence of government. There's no Ministry of Food Systems, and we probably wouldn't want there to be. So we have to construct those budgets. And I'm very pleased that under Nadine Gabossa's leadership and our colleagues at IFAD and the World Bank and others, that 3FS, this initiative, has been launched. Again, very privileged to have been there right at the beginning. Nadine, I remember talking to you in September 22 at the African Food System Forum in Kigali. Well, we were scratching our heads saying, how on earth can this be done? Can it be done? Is it feasible? So it's really happy to see it happening now. What does having a budget tell a government? It allows a government to see how much it's actually spending on food systems. It allows a government to see where the money is going within that envelope. Is there overinvestment in this area that's surprising? Is there underinvestment in this area that's a priority? It allows governments to figure out where they might find win-wins, how they can reallocate resources. It helps governments make the case to potential financiers, whether it's the IFIs, the private sector, or foundations. It's very, very helpful. It's also very helpful to donors, because this exercise is not just for governments, it's for donors. Donors very often don't know where their money is going for food systems. Very important that they do, because their food system efforts are split between many departments, just like governments. And it's also helpful for donors to work across different donor groups so that they can be complementary, they can make everything add up, and they can make sure all bases are covered. It's very important for governments, especially because the amounts of resources we're talking about domestically and even for donors are very small in relationship to the resources needed. Most of the resources are held in the private sector for food systems. That's just a fact. The food system is the private sector, whether it's farmers, retailers, millers, processors, banks, marketing agencies, transport agencies, refrigeration companies, you name it. Private sector is the food system. So how can governments use the scarce resources they have to better leverage those private sector resources? And some research we've done recently at GAIN with Michigan State University shows a wide range of benefit cost ratios for every dollar of public investment in African food systems. It yields up to 500 all the way down to less than 1. So it really matters where you invest to try to leverage the private sector. It's not just about finance, however, it's about policies too. Policies are really important. Policies can help direct resource flows. And I'm really pleased to say that we've just finished some initial work with Academia 2063 and Usman's team around a new tool for policy coherence. It's really fascinating. It shows a government, if this is your objective, how well aligned are policies in 12 of your ministries around that objective. And it will show mismatches, intentional or unintentional. But if they're intentional, at least you know them and you can explain them. So that's also very important. GAIN, along with AGRA, SUN, Academia 2063, IFAD, the World Bank, we are implementing this 3FS process in 8 African countries. Of course, it's all African, it's all government-led. That's really key. There has to be a lot of socialization of the idea, a lot of capacity building of the idea so it's sustainable. Every country can tweak the methodology as they see fit. So we're very much in the implementation phase and very happy to talk to anyone who's interested in adopting this methodology. The final point I will make, and then I will get off the stage, Usman, is I very much hope that 3FS can be is useful to the CAADP process going forward. The CAADP strategy is all about raising resources and allocating them for maximum impact on things like food security, biodiversity, nutrition, jobs. These are very important, climate resilience. These are very important outcomes. So I come back to Joe Biden. When you have the biennial reports for CAADP in the future, it's good to say this is what we've achieved, but it's even better to say this is what our budgets tell you we've achieved. Thank you.
When you talk about food systems, and it takes me back to 2021, the year that we witnessed a global discussion and a global dialogue. And I think what most of us recall is that everybody was involved, and I want to really take this opportunity to invite the person that led and guided and worked with the global partners and leaders and all spheres of the world to discuss and dissect the whole of the food system agenda and discussion. And I'm privileged and honored to invite none other than my own boss, Dr. Agnes Galibata, that led this process, to begin to hear your voice again around the food systems.
Thank you, Boaz. I had negotiated 3 minutes with Usman, because you know Usman, when he takes the microphone, he does. So he gave me the 3 minutes, and then the gentleman came and took all of them away. So anyway, here we go. Honorable Minister, thank you for being here, for being part of this conversation. I wanted to start, I have 4 points to make. If I forget to make 4 points, remind me when you get out. I wanted to start with the Joe Biden story, just to pick on what we said, Joe Biden. and you would have heard that, like Joe Biden, I have a few days remaining in office. I have a few days remaining in office. So, but here is the thing. My first few days at AGRA, the thing I had the most was, oh, AGRA doesn't partner. AGRA is a go alone. AGRA doesn't do this. And the other thing is, we were not working with AU, really. Yeah, we were out there, but we were not working with AU. And then when I talked to my team, it's like, how many governments are working with? Like, no, we don't do that. We're scared. You know, the money will disappear. I said, no, we are going to do it. I'm happy to say today that we have this summit that is going on with AU, and it's been such an amazing partnership. Thank you, Boaz and team that have worked to make this happen. We've had a huge and incredible partnership with the governments that we are working with across the countries we are working with. And we've had incredible partnerships with partners here in the room, IFAD, yourself, GAIN, academia, and we look forward to even more partnerships. So really, if you ever ask me, what did you do at AGRA? I built partnerships. So good, yeah. So, but here is the thing. We are here to talk about how we invest and the quality of investments that we do. And there's never been a better time to talk about value for money than now. And this is what this study is about. We are losing 9 billion. 9% of our GDPs in Africa is going to dealing with the challenge of climate change. ODA is dwindling. It just means that every dollar we have must be extremely very well targeted. And that's the opportunity that this tool brings to us, to think about where do we put the money, what priorities do we advance, and what are those priorities bringing us when we look at the data. We've had an opportunity to work with a number of countries that have started shifting how they are thinking. From a food system perspective, we have 7 countries now that have embraced the food systems approach, recognizing from the food system that they will prioritize food security and nutritional security at the same time. They would prioritize environmental benefits, and they will prioritize economic growth. So when you look at it that way, it just means that we need to start spending money differently. And when we look at the results, when we look at these tools, it will tell us where we are putting the money versus the strategies we just put in place. So being able to shift strategies and not shift the money, the truth will be right there in our faces, but it will also give ministers of agriculture and other ministers they are working with an opportunity to see where they're getting the biggest bang for money. So I'm really happy to say and proud to see that AGRA is going to be part and is one of those institutions that have advanced this. And we want to make sure that this tool is available in every country we work with. We want to support ministers to know how to use it. We want to support ministers to know how to stay on top of their own data and what it is telling them, and know when to shift investments. Because again, at the end of the day, every dollar must count. And I hope as we have ministers following up on the next conversation, is really have a conversation around how do we help you make every dollar count. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. And thank you, IFAD and other partners and World Bank that have put this tool together. Thank you.
Last in this segment, we are going to hear from the AU Special Envoy on Food Systems, former CEO of NEPA, Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki. And I hope Mayaki is ready online to be able to communicate the audience. Dr. Mayaki, the audience is full. I'm able where you are, you're able to see the people that are in the room. Dr. Mayaki, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Boaz. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, let me greet the ministers who were present and all the distinguished participants. So mine will be about 5 points, and I'm very happy to follow Agnes, and it's an opportunity. There will be many of us to congratulate her for all what she did in terms of agri-food systems transformation. The sensitization, sensibilization to the idea, to the approach, and the activities led on the ground. She was referring to the countries where AGRA is present. So I think it's important to recognize that. Secondly, congratulate academia for the 3FS tool, which I think is a critical tool to be used in this post-Malabo agenda, because it will guide decision-making and it will help tackle complexity in terms of policy design. So that said, I will go through 5 quick points. So first one is, when CAADP is defined and designed in Maputo with a 10% objective of public funding to then the mono sector of agriculture, planning consequentially tries to respect that objective. And as Laurent Sadat was saying, budgets need to be correlated to the objective, and not all budgets were correlated to the objective. And the biennial review I showed to us that really we are struggling to achieve this 10%. There is chronic underfunding. And if you look at what the farmers receive, a farmer in Africa receives $140 per year, and a farmer in Thailand receives $2,000 per year. And in Brazil, 1,800. So you see the magnitude of a gap in the global south between an African farmer and a Latin American farmer and an Asian farmer. So we keep repeating, but we have kept repeating that it's a question of political will. We need to give the policymakers the tools that can allow them to increase their political will. So the question I'm asking, to which I don't have a response, are we, but 3FS helps us understand that, are we funding the right things? Are we funding a system in which even if there are progresses, transformation will not happen? Shouldn't we think about funding a different type of system, where at the core of a development strategy would be agri-food systems transformation, because we know that agri-food systems transformation can help achieve all the SDGs and can have an outsized impact. So it's a question that I'm asking myself. And 3FS can help us reflect on that. Do we keep putting money and investing in the same type of systems that we know? And will it have an impact at the end, or will we come back as usual after a review to say, well, we have not made the necessary progresses? Or do we think about a different economic model, where at the core of development strategies, and I repeat myself, would be agri-food systems transformation? I think it's a question that we need to ask ourselves, because amongst us here in this room, we are all convinced of the necessity to come out of chronic underfunding and fund more public-private development partners. But are we asking ourselves the right question? Shouldn't maybe we start thinking about a different type of economic model, knowing that many of our countries have debt burdens and there is a disappearing ODA anyway? So it's a question that I'm putting on the table. And I think somehow there is a beginning of response in the post-Malabo strategy, because differently to Maputo and Malabo, it has a food systems approach. And evidently, the economic model, which is coherent with post-Malabo, is different from the economic model which was, let's say, linked to Malabo and to Maputo. So that's my important question. Now, Agnes did put on the table an extremely critical issue, which is a question of climate. And we have two big hurdles to tackle. Climate on the one hand, and population growth on the other, because we'll shift to 2 billion by 2050. So if we are aiming at food sovereignty, and we have these two hurdles to tackle, it's important to increase productivity, evidently, and increasing productivity within a different type of economic model with a necessary financing. But this financing can come out of all the carbon credits and climate finance we are talking about. So there also, 3FS can help us start thinking differently and out of the different paths that we have been used to. So in conclusion, the question is not more political will for more financing and more allocation within the budgets. The question is, how do we change the economic model in which we are in order to make it coherent with the post-Malabo strategy, having agri-food systems transformation at the core of the development strategies. And the data provided by 3FS can help us move towards intelligent responses to this question. So let me thank you again for inviting me. It is a pleasure and an honor to attend. And Boaz, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim Mahaki. And we are now going to be shifting to a different segment. And I would invite our distinguished opening speakers to take your seats back so that we can begin into a session where we begin to understand and go deeper into this session in terms of understanding the why and the how. We are privileged to have Professor Joachim von Braun, who is the distinguished professor at ZEF University of Bonn in Germany. He will come and speak about why are we thinking about these financing flows for food systems, especially drawing from his insights during the time of the food systems discussion during the summit time, but also based on his own wider experience, the why. Then we'll move into another part that tells us more about the how, and I'll be explaining to you who is going to be taking us through. So without wasting time, I'd like to invite Professor Joachim von Braun. I am hoping you are able to hear us. Professor Joachim, are you there? The technical team is telling us they're unable to find him, but earlier we were able to have him online. So when time comes, and I know there is a reason why we want to start with the why and then the how. But now I am challenged, but I think if you listen very carefully from our key opening remarks from our distinguished speakers, a lot of why are we thinking about tracking financing for the systems? Why are we concerned about this? A lot of those questions came. And I don't want to dilute what have been said, but I think at some stage, if you're able to connect with the professor, we'll be able to give him the space to speak about this. And now I want to invite speakers that are going to tell us about the methodology, the how, and the approaches based on the experience that we've been able to see in the pilot phase. And there will be two speakers. One is Christopher Ian Brett from the World Bank, who is the lead agribusiness specialist. And then Mrs. Nabosa Bosa, Director, Food Systems Coordinator, External Relations and Governance at IFAD, will come after. So I want to know whether Christopher Ian is online. Ian, can you hear us? We are told you are muted. If you can unmute and be able to speak.
Oh, I will try again. So yes, I'm online. I can see you. I would advise you to do your tie up a little bit better. It's that detailed, but I'm just saying I can see you and I'm very happy to go forward on the presentation. Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you so much. Please take it away.
Okay, we have a presentation there and my colleague Nadine Gabosi will turn the slides as we go. So let me just see the slides come up. I can see myself and I just want to see the slides come up and then I can run them through. But as the slides are coming up, I just want to introduce and say that this 3FS2, the financial flows into food system, has been developed over the last 2 years. It's been piloted, and we've developed a very robust methodology, which we'll be talking about today. What's really critical, and we've been hearing from our speakers, and I want to do a special greeting to all the ministers and esteemed guests in the room, but also to acknowledge that the speakers that have gone before me, you've really helped frame the whole point about finance. We are looking, but with the IFAD and the World Bank and with others, particularly under the Food Systems Hub, we're looking very carefully at the food finance architecture across the food system. There's a few things that I found very powerful on a personal level, and I can see the slides have come now, is that at the end of the day, I'm hearing this word transformation of the food system. And I really want the audience to share the concern that many of us are having, that there is no transformation without significant more investment. At the moment, we are really struggling to keep the food system alive on a very, very poor basis in terms of reacting to climate, reacting to nutrition, etc., and affordability. So as we go forward, I'm hoping that Nadine can turn these slides so you can see the 3FS. Yeah, let me go through now. I'm just going to spend a few minutes. I'll hand over to Nadine. Really very important, Boaz, you mentioned it, and really privileged to have Dr. Agnes Kalabata there, who gave us this really strong leadership at the UN Food Systems Summit that took place nearly 4 years ago in Rome, and really did focus on the fact that we had to develop these tracks around the food system. And IFAD and the World Bank have been privileged to be asked to have the responsibility of leading this food finance architecture. So we all know that there is huge amounts of finance missing. We're going to try and take you through a journey here where we're looking at global ODA finance, national ODA finance, and so on, and how that affects and comes into Africa. So we're looking at food production, the processing, distribution, consumption, outcomes, looking at social, economic, and environmental. If we can go forward there, Nadine, on these segments, we look at these 4 buckets. Number 1, food security and nutrition. Number 2 is the environmental sustainability. And number 3 is about building resilience. We've heard about climate smart approaches. Very important that Dr. Mayaki referred to the whole issue around climate smart, etc., and the importance. But the other thing, of course, is to look at decent incomes and working conditions and livelihoods. We need to get these 4 buckets in a correct alignment. But at the end of the day, basically, Dr. Lawrence Haddad from GAIN, of course, gave us this whole point about where is the money? How do we know the money? Where is the evidence? And I really want to sort of frame that the 3FS tool is really focusing at looking at finance across the government. We're not looking at just the Ministry of Agriculture. We're looking at cross government and agencies, and also building in the ODA that comes into these countries and analyzing that. So we're looking at really where are there impactful investments, which are timely, high quality, and look at the financial data as well. And next connection. There we are. So we're looking at the rationale. And at the moment, we've all agreed there is a lack of evidence. The objective is to track financial flows. But what is the value? It's about really developing this robust methodology. It's the tool developing simple visuals and comparable data. We don't want to give governments and work with governments to detailed, really detailed economic reports. We want to be able to give very quick information to support the budgetary processes, to support the linkage to policy. But importantly, governments make commitments on nutrition. They make commitments on climate change. We want to evidence that governments need more support in how they can, number 1, deliver on those commitments, but also how they can raise finance to target those commitments. So we get the right sequence of investments. If we can go forward, Nadine, thank you. So here, the tracking financial flows into food systems, led by IFAD and the World Bank and hubbed in the UN Food Systems Hub as well. We're very much working within those structures. And you'll see us feature at the UN Food Systems +4, which will take place in Ethiopia later this year, at some point in July. And really proud to say, and a lot of you were in the room, we're working with GAIN, we're working with FAO, with OECD, Academia 2063, which is becoming a really core partner of this. We've got SUN, we've got the 4SD, importantly, AGRA, and of course the African Agricultural Transformation Initiative as well, and the Good Food Finance Network. Very strong partners in helping us to develop this tool. Let's go forward. So what I want people now to imagine is that we need to analyze at the moment at a country level 3 levels of financing, 3 windows. Number 1 is domestic public financing. Number 2 is international development financing. And number 3 is private sector financing. What's really important is now to acknowledge we have the methodology agreed and it is working, it is operational, looking at windows 1 and 2. And we'll be talking about that as we go forward. Windows 3, private sector financing, is very important. It's going to be a huge area of finance that comes into this space. And we really need to now look at how do we develop that methodology. And I'm working with colleagues within the World Bank and of course colleagues at IFAD, really looking at how do we develop the private sector financing methodology, which we're going to apply, at the country level and looking at global financing as well from the private sector. Really important areas. And we'll talk about how this is emerging, not just from a country level tool, but also working with development financial institutions, working with the private sector, but importantly, of course, really strongly working with governments. Next slide, please. I think one critical area to understand is we're trying to keep this straightforward. And what does that mean? It means we're looking at these 5 components. We want to allocate the financing and funding, we'll talk about that in the methodology, into number 1, agricultural development and value chain. Number 2, infrastructure for food systems. This is rural infrastructure as well. Number 3, nutrition and health, very important. Number 4, social assistance. And number 5, climate change. When I look at those windows from the World Bank, I look at these components and I think, what is short term, what is medium term, and what is long term? And this is the word short term is really going into social assistance, food security, emergency assistance. This is finance, which is very much required, but it's not investing. It's not leading to change. It's just looking to keep the system up and running in a very, very short-term way. But what we're interested in is agriculture development, value chain investments. We're looking at infrastructure for food system investments and so on. So I think you can get a feeling that as we go forward, if we go to the next slide, which will be the final slide that I present, I'll hand over to Nadine. It's very important that the audience can see and understand what finance do we put within these 5 components. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can very clearly see, under the agricultural development, you've got areas of R&D, you've got the input services, you've got extension, you've got land, irrigation, infrastructure for rural food systems, you've got the water, the sanitation, irrigation will be there, you've got transportation and so on. And you can see that how we work, we take these codes, these financial codes, which have been developed with the COFOG system of the IMF and others, and we take that and work with the government institutions on how they are financing, and then we allocate it to these components, and then we build what you will see as a demonstration of the numbers that are coming out the other side, the numbers that can create conversation, can create debate, but also to create that point of how do you negotiate, how do you discuss with lead partners such as the World Bank and such as IFAD and other areas like the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank. We're all involved in this now. And how do we negotiate to make sure that that funding and finance is, number 1, going is where it's needed, but number 2, it's sequencing and building a robust transformational food systems going forward. So I'm going to stop there, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. I'm really looking forward to working with the various parts, of the governments across Africa and across the world on how we can implement this tool and bring a lot more robust conversation to food finance. Over to you, Nadine, and thank you so much for your support.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm waiting for the technician to put the presentation back on. I think you've heard a lot from our opening speakers about the why we need to know how much money is going to the food systems, and whether the money is transformative, whether we are dealing with short-term priorities, or if we are able to change the landscape, the realities of food systems in Africa. And Chris has told you the systems that we have all worked together, IFAD, the World Bank, GAIN, AGRA, OECD, FAO. You've heard academia, you've heard about all of them. We didn't want to start from scratch. We wanted to leverage the tools, the expertise, the know-how of leading partners, you saw leading methodologies, and also the way governments and development partners and stakeholders are used to count money to make it easy for everybody. And so enough about the theory, and I want to show you how it works. Chris told you that we are now able to look at what development partners are doing. I will show you this part, and we have representative from Kenya and I believe Niger, who will tell you how government are also looking at domestic resources. It's the first source of financing of development. We forget it too often. We focus on development assistance, but domestic resources is the first source of development. So the government themselves, I see Priscilla from Kenya, will show you how with these tools, they are tracking resources going to food systems. And Chris has also told you we'll be working on the private sector. But let me show you what it looks like. Showing you what development financing to food system in Africa is like. We talk a lot about development assistance and how this is supporting domestic effort, resource mobilization. And we wanted to see through this tool, what does financing, development financing to food systems looks like. So just giving you a bit of context. Basically, there's been a commitment from the development partners to finance food system transformation in support of developing countries, the least developed countries, and there's 38 of them, and the majority of them are African countries. And we committed as development partners to scale up long-term development financing, to also scale up concessional financing and operational support, because we know of the debt distress, that the rates will be grants, flexible lending rates, more borrowing limits, and accelerate disbursement. And finally, to make sure that our resources development financing will be conducive of private sector investment and also innovative financing. This was our commitment, and we want to see what does it look like since up to 2021. So with this system, we've been looking at the Africa region at international development financing flows to food systems. And we've seen that between 2018 and 2021, there's been between 20 to 22 billion of development financing going to food systems in Africa. You see a peak in 2020, 24 billion, because this was the COVID year. So development partners increased development financing going to the Africa region. Surprisingly, if we want to do comparison, you will see that there was a higher increase in Asia or Latin America, for the simple reason that Africa is the region of the world, and you see this in green, which received the largest share of development financing going to food systems. I've shown you basically here, you see 60.5 billion. This is the share of development financing going to food systems. You are used to hearing how much money is going to health, to education, to agriculture. This is the first time we're able to see how much of the development financing is going to food system. I think it's about 200 billion. Somebody should give water to the gentleman, so maybe to relieve you. Please feel free to take some water here, even if it's on the stage. So just to say that out of about 200 billion of development financing going to food system, to development financing, 60 billion is going to food system in 2021. And we see over the years that about 35 to 40% is going to the Africa region. So Africa is the region of the world which receives the largest share of food system financing. And Dr. Mayaki, Dr. Kalibata, Dr. Usman all said it's about the change this money is bringing. And we are, of course, all concerned that Africa is the region of the world where food security has been increasing. We are seeing the impact of climate change. I mean, we are seeing that 70% of the debt, for example, the loss of climate change are in the Africa region. You all know we are the most impacted, and we also have the largest share of people living in poverty from food systems. Yet at the same time, the power of transformation is there. And this is where we really want to see not how much money Africa is receiving, but is this money conducive of changes? And this is where we get into controversial data in Africa, where through this system, we see that about 35%, you see it in red, Chris was giving you the buckets, 35%, 34% of the development assistance going to food system in Africa is going to social assistance. Social assistance is food assistance. It is cash transfer for food. So it's really kind of addressing short-term needs, which I know are very important in the region, notably because of the climate issues or the food insecurity issue, but also because conflict is the biggest driver of food insecurity today. And with the increase of conflict in the region, we see the tension that a lot of development assistance, 1/3 is now going to social assistance to provide support to the people most in need to meet their food security needs. This means that next come agriculture with about 30% of the financing. So you see the tension. More is going to food assistance today than it is going into agricultural investment from development partners. Infrastructure is at about 19%, climate change 10%, and nutrition and health 8%. This is where the development financing to food system is going. We are refining this a bit. We expect that infrastructure will increase a bit, but it's really to show you what Chris was telling you, the tension between the short term, addressing immediate social assistance need and supporting the most vulnerable population versus the transformation, investing in agriculture. And we see a real tension here. We are also seeing, and here it's not competition, but where is the money coming from? And we can see that 5 bilateral, the US, Germany, United Kingdom, France, and Canada together are about responsible for 70% of the development assistance going to food systems. And we have among the multilateral, the World Bank, the EU, and African Development Bank Group in the Africa region provide about 80% of the development financing to food system. And you can see that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I mean, the philanthropies is much smaller, but they come with about 50% of the financing. As I say, this is not competition, but it's a dialogue. When you want to influence development partners on the food system financing in Africa, who do you speak to? And by targeting these donors, you are targeting a big chunk of the money. And this is information for the government, the stakeholders to say, who do we speak to change the picture, to discuss where the money is going? I'm telling you about the Africa region. We have the whole list. Development partners like to see themselves, so I can reassure you that everybody plays their role. But this is just for sake of time showing you the kind of trends we are seeing here. Also, something that we found very interesting is that among the African countries, we have 11 countries receiving 55% of the development financing to food systems. These countries are Morocco, you see them in blue on the map, and you have Egypt. These are not African countries, middle income countries. And then you also see countries in the Sahel region. You see Niger, Burkina Faso, and somehow Nigeria. You know, sometimes we forget that the north of Nigeria is seeing one of the biggest food crises in the world. You also have the Horn of Africa, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Sudan, and we have the DRC. So you see the two giants who are Nigeria and DRC. You see the Horn of Africa, you see the Sahel, and we see Morocco and Egypt. We found them very different, and we were wondering, why would 11 countries receive 55% of the disbursement and have about 44 countries receiving 45%? Why this concentration? And we realized that these are the most populous countries in Africa. So first of all, money is driven by population. So the money is going to the countries with the biggest population, but don't be misled. You also see big difference per capita. You will be surprised that, yes, a country like South Sudan receive a lot of money per capita, but Nigeria and DRC receive the lowest amount per capita. And this is food for thought. When you know you need to invest in these countries to really drive change at the continent level because they have the largest share of the population on the continent. The second thing is that we see a commonality between these countries is that all of these countries, most of them except Morocco, Egypt, and Kenya, are country classified as fragile and conflict countries. So you really see again this tension. This is the reason also why you have a lot of money going to food assistance, because all these countries are, I mean, 8 out of these 11 countries are classified as country with high fragility and conflict situation. In situation of WFP and the partners working with them, call them in situation of high acute food insecurity situation in need of food assistance. What does it mean is that we are working with the money is going to countries, as I said, in situation of conflict and fragility, needing food assistance, and you see then why 1/3 of the money going to food systems is going into food assistance, because these are the countries receiving most of the money and the responsibility we have in dealing with conflict, which is basically a big driver of the money. So also, all of these countries are highly vulnerable to climate change. As I mentioned, we're experiencing a lot of loss. 70% of the deaths in Africa are coming from climate change, the loss of GDP, the loss in infrastructure, and so it's also assisting this population. So as a conclusion, we see that the money is going to countries with high population, where there's fragility and conflict and a need for food assistance. And then you understand more the question we were asking at the beginning, why these countries? Because it's the Sahel, you know, one of the highest sensitive region in terms of crisis and food insecurity. We are talking of the Horn of Africa as well. And we are talking of Nigeria and DRC, which are basically the giant of the region facing high food security and climate change issues. So again, we understand the different dynamic here. I wanted to show you what this system can do in terms of showing us the money and kind of, as Chris was saying, driving conversation on short-term versus long-term, on conflicts versus transformation, on targeting the countries and what we are working on. And this is what the development partners are doing. You have seen who are the biggest providers. It's also giving an insight on conversation with them. I will not go into details, but for example, the US is more focused on food assistance, while Germany works more on agriculture. You see organizations like GAIN on nutrition, like IFAD on agriculture, the World Bank strong on infrastructure. So it is important to understand these different dynamics and trends in order, we see it, data for impactful investment to understand what is really happening. Now, this is kind of a general pictures of what the development partners are doing. We also supported 3 countries, and we were very happy to have Kenya, Niger, and Peru volunteering to explain and show how they're using this tool to understand the mapping of their financial flows to food system and how it helps them to understand and to target the investment. I want to remind you that Africa was one of the first region coming with a common position on food system. And one of the asks of the Africa Common Position was tool analytics to target the investment to food systems. So we feel that by providing this tool, we were responding to these needs. And then I will let you see how Niger and Kenya are using this. But let me finish to say that our priority was to help them have an evidence base on financial flow to food system, where they lead and they have complete ownership on their data. They bring together the different agencies and ministries and departments working on food system, because we got the understanding that it's bigger, and Kenya will explain it, that the Ministry of Agriculture, and that our role was to provide them with methodological support. What do we mean by methodological support? Is that there was no methodology before to look at food systems. Again, gender, well, how much is going to gender, education, health, agriculture, we're used to that, but food system, we got the question, how do we track? What is the methodology Lawrence was saying to understand money going to food systems? And that's the support we wanted to provide, and to say that now we are all working together, IFAD and the World Bank leading this agenda. We have joined force with GAIN, with AGRA, Academia 2063, the Hub, and the United Nations systems in order to support 8 additional African countries. We will be 10 in order to track and map the financing to food systems, looking at domestic resource, development financing, I've shown that to you, and soon the private sector. And with that, let me give the floor back to you, Boaz. Thank you.
quality of the clapping of the hand demonstrates the appreciation of the message that has been given. From where I come from, that was wonderful. And I feel the tensions, the paradoxes, especially around investment financing and the results that we are getting across the continent over years. And I think the debate needs to be really invoked here. And I can begin to see how this is going to really create a lot of discussions. For me, the main challenge is who is actually listening and taking this data seriously, where policies and decisions are being made to make sure that there is really action happening to make sure that the investment are actually reflecting the transformation we want to see. I'm informed that Professor Joachim is now online. I want to confirm if he's ready to take us again through the why challenging us on why should we really be spending time and thinking. And I think a lot of it has been provoked a lot. I'm extremely excited personally, but let me just keep it calm here. Let's hear from Professor Joachim von Braun if you are able to. Can you hear us, Prof?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me? Yes, I'm here. Hello, boss. Can you hear me?
It's
Hello?
Chris. It's Chris, another speaker, Joachim. I can hear you. I'm not sure if you're connecting to the room, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I see my name now on the screen.
Yeah.
Osman, do you want to check again with him directly because he seems to have.
Hello? Hello, boss. Colleagues, I'm sorry that this doesn't seem to work. I sent you a PowerPoint. Hello?
Prof, the signals we are getting this side say you are speaking, but we need you to unmute.
I am unmuted.
I can hear you very clearly.
Does this work now?
Can you hear us, Professor Joachim?
Yes, I hear. Can you hear me? Hello? 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 I don't see a hello. Hello. Are you here? Hello?
Hello. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. So, Prof, been waiting, and we are glad that you're online now, that we can hear you and you can hear us.
Okay. Would you be so kind to load up the few slides which I wanted to talk to? They are on the system. Can you have the slides up? My PowerPoint?
Yes, slides are being loaded, Professor.
Well, let me start introducing a few points. I think the logic of talking about the why after we talked about how is actually no problem. We need both, and both need to interact. Next slide, please. The why tracking financial flows is critical for governments, finance institutions, private sector, farmers, and development partners. Next. Why tracking financial flows is critical for governments is it's needed for policy design and monitoring, for leveraging external financing, and to align agricultural investments with African and global goals. Next. Actually, in our discussions for the upcoming stocktaking of the UN Food System Summit this year, we identified with Amina Mohammed, who chairs the task force for that, that financing will be a top agenda item. One big example is the financial needs for achieving the SDG 2, ending world hunger by 2030 or soon thereafter, and in African countries and the African region. The scenarios which we have looked upon Sorry, the slides have disappeared from my screen. Do you still see it? Do you still see it? I don't hear you.
We can see the slide on the big examples.
Okay, good. So the issue I want to draw attention to is that we need at country level and at continental level the tracking in order to relate it to the goals, climate goals and the SDGs. We have the challenge that by 2030, to achieve SDGs requires mostly transfer, social protection, school feeding, and short-term impact programs. They are necessary but expensive. If we want to mobilize investment that takes time to mature, such as in agricultural development, infrastructure, and so on, the 2030 timeline for the SDG 2 is no longer achievable because of lack of finance in the last 10 years. Next. The next slide should have the heading, Why Tracking Financial Flows is Beneficial for Financial Institutions. As I can see them on my screen, the key points are returns to investment analysis requires that and risk management. And to unlock private capital, it cannot only be public capital. Next one are the next slide on the opportunities for the private sector and farmers. That's where the tracking is needed for market insights, public-private collaboration, and getting information to farmers. Next slide. There is a role of donors and international organizations. We can skip that because it has been covered in the previous presentations. Next slide on challenges for tracking financial flows need to be considered. Tracking financial flows requires human resources, statistics, institutions, organizations. It is not coming free of charge. Currently, we have fragmented data from diverse sources. I think that's the first bullet point which I want to refer to in this particular slide. And we need to, what has not been mentioned so far, identify inflows to and outflows from the agri-food system, including illicit outflows. Only proper auditing will identify the outflow aspects which need to be considered. And we need to include the informal sector in tracking systems. The non-finance-based farm and community investments are important. Next is recommendations for action. There I have 4 points. Develop the comprehensive tracking frameworks, and the 3FS is a major positive step in that direction. Secondly, leverage technologies for using blockchains and invest in training and data management systems. That's where I think IFAD and the World Bank can play key roles to facilitate that. Third, facilitate tracking of financial flows to investment and outcomes. So not only the flows, but also the outcomes are important to be monitored as an integral system of financial flow monitoring. And fourth, integrate the informal sector data for resource flows. So for that, we need to use innovative services. While it is not only about money, it is also about labor mobilization. Think of a community level labor mobilization for land improvement. That needs to be part of the overall resource tracking. So the financial flow tracking needs to be complemented with the innovative mobilization of any resource tracking, finance and non-finance. Last, on conclusions, tracking financial flows is essential for informing policies, attracting investments, building trust, fostering innovation, and the call to action, government institutions and the private sector to collaborate to build robust and coherent tracking systems. Harmonization of these in the African space under Agenda 2063 and the UN Food System Summit will be great opportunities for the way forward. Thank you for your attention, and I really find it important to underline that in 2025, we have major opportunities to connect the finance flow tracking to the climate agenda and the food agenda with COP30 in Brazil and the UNFSS stock taking and the Africa 2063 updates. So this is timely and opportune. Thank you. I hope you heard me.
Thank you very much, Professor Joachim. And I think you've highlighted the milestones, the timelines that we have, and the opportunities that they are in to make sure that this particular tool is very well understood and rolled out in different countries. I know that we are going to go into a debate and a discussion with the ministers that are in the room. But just before that, Nadine explicitly mentioned the pilot countries, and this is Kenya and Niger. Do we have a representative from Niger in the room? Just to confirm. But luckily enough, we are happy to have Ms. Priscilla Muriuri, who is going to speak to us on behalf of the National Convener of the Ministry of Agriculture, Republic of Kenya, a country that we've had the opportunity to pilot this. Priscilla, you have the opportunity to come and let people know, what have you seen so far? Is it revealing more than what we should have known? But what I think Nadine was sharing with us, for me, one of the paradoxes is we are actually getting more resources into that space. They are going into social investments. The transformation is not at the same pace as the investment that reflecting a lot of debate has happened. But let's hear from Priscilla. You have the floor here.
Thank you very much. Pascaline, I think you can put up the slides. My name is Priscilla Muiruri from the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development in Kenya. I'm here on behalf of the National Food Systems Convener. I also chair the multi-sectoral technical working group on food systems transformation in Kenya. I also coordinate a project, Food Systems Resilience Project, which is focusing on arid and semi-arid lands where we really need to embrace the climate smart agriculture processes in order to transform food systems. I have a few slides which I would like to speak to, and Pascalina, if you can kindly show the slides, I'll be able to take you through the experience that we have had in Kenya. As Pascalina does that, in the interest of time, probably I would start by saying that we have had the privilege of piloting the 3FS, the financial flows to food systems. It has been a very intensive exercise. I'm sure Nadine can testify to that. And we do thank both IFAD, the World Bank, GAIN, and AGRA for partnering with us in order to be able to pilot the system. What I'd like to say as the slides come up is that it is extremely important for countries to own the process. And this has been evident in Kenya because we have the backing of the government in order to pilot and also transform the food systems. The national convener is the Cabinet Secretary or the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. And we have a technical working group that comprises of about 20 ministries, departments, and agencies. This goes to show that it is not a preserve of one ministry or in any particular country, but we need everybody involved in order for us to transform food systems within a country. If the slides were up, you'd be able to see the various MDAs, but I think Pascalina is working on that. Another thing which is very, very key is the issue of leadership and coordination. Governance is extremely important because the multiple stakeholders each have a role, either directly or indirectly, to contribution to food systems. And therefore, it is very important for these organizations to work together. I'm on the 4th slide now. If you could show the results, I'd be able to speak onto it. But what I'd like to say is that this tool has enabled us to appreciate the stewardship and the government commitment to food systems. Over 75% of the budget is actually from domestic resources. And this therefore calls for governments to be able to take stewardship and ensure that we put investment in the various segments that contribute to food systems. About 30% of investment in food system is from development partners, between 20 to 30%. Between 70 to 80% is actually contribution from domestic resources. And if you look, we have had an opportunity to analyze data from 2017 to 2022. And there has been a steady growth in government and development partner investment. Surprisingly, the trend has been more or less the same. We invest more in agricultural value chains and value chain development. Are you there? And then there is investment in infrastructure. Then we have nutrition and health. Then we have social assistance. Are you there? Not yet. And climate change, which takes about 9.1%. So let's show the results because I've already spoken to the other areas. The results are in slide 4. I can be able to move with this. Okay. And of course, the role of the National Treasury in any country is very, very important because the data, you actually get it from the National Treasury. In each of the 20 ministries, departments, and agencies, we have had a focal point. And this focal point has been very, very instrumental in mobilizing the stakeholders and actually tagging the data so that we can attribute what goes directly to financing food systems and what goes indirectly to financing food systems. You can see the various ministries, departments, and agencies. There are 20 of them, and each one has a stake, has a role towards financing food systems, either directly or indirectly. And this is the kind of data that you need to put together in order for you to make an analysis onto what goes into food system. Now, those are the results for Kenya. As I said earlier, 75% of funding is actually by domestic resources. Then we have between 20 to 30% of the funding from international resources. And if you see the trends, it's more or less the same from 2017 all the way to 2022. So where government takes stewardship, the trend and priorities follow. And you have seen over the years, there has been a steady increment in funding, apart from 2020-21, when we had the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the years, we have seen a similar trend with international funding. And what we are saying, therefore, is we need to look at the data critically, model the data, and provide scenario planning so that we can have evidence-based policy. In Kenya, we take data and digitalization very seriously because we want to inform policy through evidence. This data has been able to provide the expenditure trends, as you have seen. And what we are saying, modeling the 3FS data and the dashboard data will be able to inform scenario mapping. And that is the work that is currently ongoing. What we have learned also is that there is need to strengthen food systems expenditure tracking. The work I have shown goes up to 2022. And we have taken it upon ourselves as a country to be able to continue with this work so that we are able to inform our policy. If you go back to the CAADP BR reporting for Kenya, you'll realize from 2017, 19, 2023, there has been a steady growth. And the steady growth can be attributed to investment in food systems. So from where we sit, we want to believe this is work that is in progress, and we continue working towards enhancing and strengthening food systems expenditure tracking. It's very, very key and very relevant. Finally, Kenya has a devolved system of government. This is data that we have from the national government. And what we are doing is modeling the scenarios at the sub-national level. And this, we are partnering with GAIN, thank you very much, as well as AGRA, to be able now to do the tagging even at the sub-national level. So thank you very much.
We are now moving into another segment. Thank you so much, Priscilla, again, sharing with us those good experiences that Kenya is seeing. Already the excitement is happening in the country because of revelations that we are beginning to see in terms of tracking public expenditure. We are going to have a short, quick discussion within countries, among countries, and we are privileged to have some ministers amongst us. I wanted to invite the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, who is a representative from the United Democratic Republic of Tanzania. Do we have a representative here of the Minister Bashir? If not, then I don't know whether we have, I had seen earlier Dr. Henry Musa Makapa from Sierra Leone. I don't know whether he has joined us yet. Then I want to invite and have the opportunity to invite Honorable Dr. Girma Mente, the Minister of Agriculture, Federal Republic of Ethiopia. Welcome, Dr. Girma. I'm also honored and privileged to invite the Minister of Agriculture, the Republic of Rwanda. Honorable Minister, you're welcome. I wanted to confirm whether we have the Deputy National Food Systems Convener for Benin. If you're in the room, please join us. And then lastly, Dr. Sanjo Fanaran from Nigeria, who is the Director of Social Development Office of the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. And I think that's a unique opportunity to see somebody from Ministry of Finance, because in many cases, the thinking is different. If you're in the Ministry of Agriculture looking and chasing money and convincing Ministry of Finance to allocate the right resources in the right areas of investments. So having you from Ministry of Finance is very critical to be on this panel. You're welcome. And I will start with Dr. Girma, Ethiopia. And I know there is a lot that has been happening since the Food Systems Summit. Can you share with us the institutional architecture? What is happening in the country? What is the readiness, and especially listening from what the colleagues have shared with us? How is Ethiopia ready to take up this tool? Or if you are doing something that is similar to this, what can the people really listen and hear from what Ethiopia is doing so far?
Thank you very much, moderator. I would like to thank also the organizers of this event, academia, and other partners for giving me the chance to share Ethiopia's experience on that. Of course, we have taken our own way to develop the process. Ethiopia actually accepts the UN FSS call at the end of 2020 to develop the Ethiopian agri-food system transformation pathway. And then we have really the architecture of so we have developed our own food system roadmap in a very participatory way. Of course, for Ethiopia, transforming the food system is a very critical one. It is all about offering decent chance for access to food at the most basic level and provide basic services such as electrification, infrastructure to the rural communities, and exceptionally focusing on priority and key enablers as well. The Ethiopian food system has like 5 pillars. One is ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. Number 2 is shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. Number 3 is boost nature positive production system. Number 4 is advanced equitable livelihoods. And number 5 is about resilience to vulnerable and shocks and stresses. And we have about 24 game-changing solutions that we have developed all together. As far as the governance system is concerned, in Ethiopia, like it is presented by Kenya, we have, for example, at federal level, interministerial steering committee with 15 ministers, member ministers. This is the second highest structure next to the cabinet. And this structure is chaired by Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture. We co-chair the structures. So this is just to bring all together across the value chain of the food system, because this is not only agriculture, we are working from production to consumption, the whole value chain. So the interministerial steering committee is bringing that all together. And the second platform is the development partners platform, where we are trying to bring all support from the development partners into supporting the food system. And we have cascaded that at subnational level, creating council at the subnational level, one step further. So having designed the roadmap, and then what we have done is we have done the country diagnostics to check whether the domestic funding is going accordingly to the game-changing solutions and to the pillars. So we have done the diagnostics and completed that diagnostics already. From this diagnostics, what we have realized is like it's presented by Kenya. From Ethiopian side, also 53% of the funding is coming from the domestic finance. We're really surprised that almost all of our national initiatives are aligning to these game-changing solutions. And at the game changer level, at the intervention level, and at the activity level. And 38% of the funding is coming from government implemented development partner source. And 8.6% of the funding is coming directly from the development partners side. And again, as we have identified these 5 or 6 different pillars, we also disaggregated the existing finance based on the different pillars. And we saw that cluster 1, that is increasing production and productivity, is getting more finance right now. And cluster 2 is the nutrition part, which is with the Ministry of Health, is getting the second finance. And when it's come to the infrastructure, the logistics, and those parts are really what is really missing. So we have identified and these gaps where we have to work continuously in the future, and we shared this with our development partners, and they are really happy with the identification process of the gaps, and they are really looking forward to align upcoming finances with those to bridge really those existing gaps from the diagnostics study we have made. And of course, we have, for all pillars, we have identified existing finance, what is missing, and the level of funding we require is actually well identified. And the lessons actually is that for us, after we saw all this coordination, we saw that there is a lot of overlaps and duplication of resources across the different pillars, that we have to sit down and optimize the available resource, even in terms of making use of the best use of the resource itself. And of course, we realize that in the diagnostic process, we only now worked with the 2 pillars of the financing options, as it's already presented from the World Bank, that we are only working on the public funding and development partner side. And we saw that the private sector wing is something which we have to engage now at this level. So we are going to focus now next how to mobilize the private sector finance into the system. And we have really the privilege that now we have the convergence action blueprint that we are working together with the hub, I think in the coming weeks in January, that now we are going to really see the resilience, climate action and food system transformation linkage, where we see the need for financing that part of the whole architecture. The good thing in Ethiopia is in the whole process of designing our roadmap and also identifying the gaps, we did it by our own way and with participation of the development partners, and everybody is on board. And we feel that we can confidently mobilize available resources from the partners and from the government, from the experience we have so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gima. And I think when I hear you articulate what you call the diagnostics, it seems these gentlemen and ladies in Ethiopia have read the methodology and the model that we are going to deploy. And I saw you, Nadine, listening keenly on, does this align with the model? But I think the point I'm getting here is there's already a mechanism, an institutional mechanism to track investments around the food systems agenda. The mechanisms are there, the mindset, the thinking's already there. I think it's an important part of applying the model and the tool to make sure that it's flowing. What here is actually showing the results seem to really indicate that the model is beginning to work. And I really appreciate Dr. Gilman on that. I'll invite the Minister of Agriculture, Rwanda. Honorable Minister, and I know you are relatively new in the ministry, but very experienced in the sector, if I could say, Honorable Minister. And you have the floor based on what you've heard. What is Rwanda's readiness? Because so considering Rwanda has been our launch pin in most of these models and instruments on the continent from the history of CAADP. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you for welcoming to this panel. So my voice is not good. I've been having a terrible cold, but as you rightly put it, yes, that's a lot better. That's a lot better. Yeah. So I'm not new in the sector. I've been in the sector in Rwanda since 1995, but in and out of the government, but within the sector. So I've been listening very keenly, and to respond to the question, I would say that I think as Rwanda, we are in a very unique position to be able to implement the 3 Fs. What we can share is that, first of all, we need to have policy commitment. That's very important. And I think in the presentation by Nadine, I saw a heading which states leadership and ownership. I know people can use so many jargons. I come from background of research. There is what I call paradigm shifts, you know. I remember that when I was in research, we can become so academic. But I like now as a minister, if I have to make sure that we have clear deliverables, we simplify what you are doing. And that's when it becomes very easy to understand. So first of all, leadership is the starting point. And that's where we get accountability. So I'll come to tracking financial flows, but let me say, first of all, we've been able in Rwanda to align our sector strategy to 3 Fs, which are embedded, I think, in our culture of tracking and doing evidence-based whatever we do. But I will tell you that we can see a lot of gaps in what we're doing. First of all, tracking of finances that go into agri-systems, I think is not only a challenge for Rwanda, but for many countries. You know, when you're in the room there, we were talking of committing 10% of the budget, but some countries were saying they cannot commit it. But in actual fact, because we don't have data, it becomes difficult to know how much we are putting in. If, for example, the amount of money that goes into feeder roads, where we've got agricultural investments, many countries don't report that as a part of going to 3 Fs, into financial tracking, into food systems. So for us, we see this 3 F as an opportunity, I think, to implement, to put into our PSTA 5. So we are using a structured data pathway that can work and integrate seamlessly the goals and priorities that we have seen already into our PSTA 5. We also understand the 3 Fs will not only enhance our capacity to track financial flows, but also create a more systematic connection between our national investments and outcomes within our food systems. This would be invaluable in monitoring the effectiveness of our strategy. So we measure how much we put in and what we're getting out. But what we are seeing is that as a government, we put in money, for example, invested in inputs, for example, like irrigation, seeds, fertilizer, pest control. But you find where we've got farmers doing the traditional farming, farming. For example, for maize, they get about 4 metric tons per hectare for maize. But where we've got commercial enterprise, with the same inputs, they get 10 metric tons per hectare. So what does that mean? We've put in the same resources, but what you're getting out is different, showing that there's a need, I think, for us to be able to crunch data and understand where the gaps in the traditional farming systems, where we have put in the government subsidies, we put in irrigation, we put in, and we put in certified seeds, and yet you are getting raw productivity. So data tracking is very important to identify where the gaps. But I can tell you now that we basically know where it is. It's in the agronomy, in the science. But the inputs are okay, but the agronomy part is not okay. Then the other part is where we have embedded in our PST5 is multi-sector coordination is key. We've put in place a coordination mechanism, a system actually with the support of AGRA. We are very grateful to be able to coordinate the food systems because traditionally one would think it's a responsibility of one ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture. But we see it's collaborative, it's many partners. For example, we see the Ministry of Infrastructure is very key. In Rwanda, have invested so much in increasing productivity, for example, by developing irrigation schemes. But I find the investors are saying, oh, there are no roads, there are no access roads for produce. For those who are in horticulture, when they harvest, do they have the proper logistics? So this is why you see the Ministry of Infrastructure comes in, those who are in logistics and transportation come in, those on cold chain come in. Then the environment, land stabilization, land management. So in the past, you would find it would probably be done by two ministries, agriculture and then maybe environment. So we are putting resources in the same thing. So with this coordination, we find that we can actually optimize our productivity. In other words, for every $1 we put in, what do we get by increasing that kind of optimization? So that's briefly what I can say, that we are trying to coordinate the way we work. And then of course we've got the ministry. I think I saw in Kenya, they have about 20 ministries. We probably have as many that we are going to find. In nutrition, it's an example. We have got a Ministry of Education. We have got a Ministry of Local Government. We have got the Ministry of Health, and so on. So all these are partners, but we find as a government, if we have to get good value for money in food in these food systems, we have to have a way of coordinating from within a ministry and also across government.
Thank you so much, Minister. A clap for him, please. Thank you. Oh, okay. Okay, we have a French translation that is coming to our dear colleague. But I really wanted to appreciate Rwanda in terms of the articulation, because Rwanda brings it to us not only really understanding the food system thinking, but also like directly putting in the national development planning process. Your Rwanda transformation, what is it? The PSTA5, the plan for revitalization of agriculture in Rwanda, the PSTA5 is already food system centric.
It was actually launched on the 6th of December, and it has aligned the CAADP principles in it. So we are now actually implementing it.
So not only the plan, Nadine, again, I look at the intention of this session. What is the country readiness? What is the thinking, the institutional and other forms of infrastructure and the architecture to take on board this tracking tool? And I pick it from the minister that everything is in there. They're beginning to see some of the elements of where resources are going, but the tool will be able to really pinpoint on where this needs to be. And in his remarks, he actually indicated that this is a tool that could help take this forward. So let me just turn to my colleague from Benin. Je n'ai pas parlé français, je peux parler français. Vous parlez anglais? So, okay. So I'll ask the question and really basically along the same rhythm. Benin as a country, where are you? If you see the discussion that has been taking place, the tool, the way it's been shared with us, is the country ready? And how can you tell us about the food systems in Benin, and so that the team here can really be able to learn from Benin? And over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Françoise Sailly. I'm the country director for GAIN, who is also partnering with IFAD and the World Bank on this initiative. In Benin, GAIN has been only there for 1 year, but we are working hand in hand with the government to make sure that the food system transformation process is evolving, and also making sure that the tools that are available and have been used in other countries can be profitable for the country that is also going to make sure that the food system transformation is a reality in Benin. We have here somebody from the Ministry of Agriculture working with us, and he's the Deputy National Convener, and he's going to talk about the food system in Benin and how this tool is really profitable for Benin. I will be trying to summarize his message in French. Thank you.
So can you now hear it? Exactly.
La question
The question
qui est
that I
posée,
raised, which you can translate to him.
la question qui est posée, c'est de savoir quel est le profit des systèmes alimentaires au Bénin et comment cet outil qui permet de tracer les financements vers les systèmes alimentaires peut être utile au Bénin.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, my English is very bad. C'est the reason I will speak French. OK. Merci beaucoup. Je m'appelle, je ne sais pas, elle m'a déjà présenté, Dominique Dédébré. Je représente le coordonnateur national des systèmes alimentaires au Bénin, qui est empêché par rapport à ces rangs. Il faut dire qu'au Bénin, il y a beaucoup d'efforts qui sont faits par rapport à la transformation des systèmes alimentaires. Nous avons différents ministères qui travaillent pour pouvoir véritablement œuvrer pour que les systèmes alimentaires au Bénin soient vraiment une révolution. Actuellement, au Bénin, vous avez une approche qui est constituée de ce qu'on appelle la territorialisation de l'agriculture, qui permet vraiment à chaque zone dédiée à l'agriculture d'être propice et d'attirer les investissements nécessaires pour pouvoir développer toutes les filières qui sont vraiment retenues par le gouvernement. Je vais dire ça d'abord.
His name is Dominique Dedewe. He's the Deputy National Convener, and he's working at the Ministry of Agriculture. Actually, in Benin, the food system transformation is working on making sure that every region has a specific way of analyzing the value chain that can be developed in every region, and how every region can contribute to really transform our food system.
Alors, cette approche que le Bénin a adoptée, vraiment l'outil que je viens de voir tout à l'heure et que j'avais déjà vu il y a de cela quelques mois, va permettre véritablement d'attirer les investissements. Et de quel investissement il s'agit? Il s'agit vraiment de renforcer les investissements structurants. C'est ça que j'ai vu dans la présentation du Kenya, et les investissements structurants vers vraiment les infrastructures. C'est surtout cela qui va me permettre vraiment, véritablement, de transformer le système alimentaire au Bénin. Je vais revenir sur quelques exemples que nous avons déjà commencé par expérimenter au Bénin par rapport aux infrastructures structurantes. Je vais nommer par exemple, je m'arrête, je continue. Voilà. Je vais prendre par exemple l'exemple de l'industrialisation. Actuellement au Bénin, nous avons créé une zone dédiée aux industries dans laquelle plusieurs industries sont venues s'installer pour transformer localement les produits que nous avons mis sur le marché. Et ça permet vraiment d'ajouter de la valeur, disons, à ces produits-là et de rendre vraiment le producteur content de fruit de ses labeurs. Donc, c'est ça qui permet vraiment aux producteurs de tirer profit de son agriculture par rapport à ce qui se passait auparavant. Deuxième exemple que je vais donner, c'est par rapport au désenclavement des zones de production. Et ça a permis, c'est vraiment une réalité au Bénin, ça a permis vraiment de drainer les productions vers les zones enclavées, les zones reculées, vers les marchés, ce qui permet également aux producteurs de tirer profit de leur labeur. Troisième exemple que je peux donner rapidement pour finir, c'est par rapport, disons, au marché. Actuellement, vous savez que le marché, c'est le lieu de rencontre de l'acheteur et du vendeur. Donc, c'est un point stratégique. Actuellement, le Bénin est en train de développer des infrastructures de marché très modernes qui permettent vraiment à toutes les parties prenantes de venir échanger, ce qui permet de créer non seulement de l'emploi, mais également ajouter de la valeur aux produits que nous avons sur les marchés.
So he's sharing here some examples of what is being done in Benin especially in terms of leveraging different region and specific value chain from different region. For instance, Benin has created a region that is called industrial zone, where in that industrial zone, products like cotton, like cashew nuts, are being transformed in Benin, so that the producers can get the transformed product from Benin. And also the government is working on making sure that the road to access the market from the producers and to access the products from the producers from the side of buyers is also assured. The government is making sure that we have new markets, facilities in different regions in the country, so that the products can be in those markets and people can have access to those markets. So those are the three examples.
Okay.
Those are the three examples that Benin is so far implementing.
So based on what you're seeing in Benin, how, and listening to what Nadine and Christopher presented in terms of the 3FS, the tool for tracking, how do you see this relevant, and what do you think is the country's appetite to take up this tool?
Basé sur ce qui a été présenté tout à l'heure et basé aussi sur les exemples qui ont été donnés, comment est-ce que vous voyez le pays s'approprier de cet outil et comment est-ce que le pays pourrait profiter vraiment de cet outil?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Je pense que l'implémentation de cet outil au Bénin permettrait, disons, au pays vraiment de mieux comprendre les besoins en financement, première des choses. Ensuite, ça permettra au Bénin de suivre de façon détaillée comment le budget est utilisé au niveau du pays et comment les investissements externes, c'est-à-dire les aides extérieures, comment ces aides aussi sont utilisées. Et la coordination de tous ces investissements permettra au Bénin de suivre comment ces investissements sont utilisés pour la transformation des systèmes alimentaires. Je vois que c'est le premier bénéfice que nous pouvons tirer par rapport à l'implémentation de cet outil-là. Mais pour pouvoir le faire, il nous faut certaines conditionnalités. Actuellement, au Bénin, nous avons une task force sur les systèmes alimentaires, disons un groupe de référence sur les systèmes alimentaires qui est composé de plusieurs experts sectoriels. Mais je pense que ce groupe devrait être renforcé pour avoir en son sein des experts métiers en suivi budgétaire et également en système alimentaire. Ça, c'est important pour pouvoir vraiment implémenter cet outil-là. L'autre chose aussi, nous devons aussi renforcer la collaboration avec les PTF, avec les bailleurs de fonds. Parce que pour que cet outil soit implémenté au Bénin, il nous faut développer de la méthodologie et ce sont les PTF qui vont nous aider à développer les méthodologies et également à financer l'implémentation de cet outil-là au Bénin. Donc ça aussi, je pense que c'est important qu'il faut prendre en compte par rapport à l'utilisation de cet outil-là au Bénin.
So this tool is going to be very, very useful because it's going to help the country to see the financial gaps and also to see how the budget, the current budget is used, in which different budget line we are really financing the food system transformation, and how the international support, how international partners are supporting that transformation of our food system. We have, for the moment, a task force that is working on food system transformation. And I can say that with the support of GAIN and different partners, Benin now has his own dialogue report and also a roadmap. Benin is working on finalizing its action plan, which is good. And this task force, with the support of different other partners and experts in budget management and in budget monitoring, can be able to help Benin to analyze its investment and to make sure that it can really transform its food system and see the gaps and then decide to look for more financing.
Thank you so much. And I think that appetite is there, the infrastructure mechanism is there. And based on what you just explained, it's extremely important that we see that Benin is a country that's ready to really take up this effort, but also in the spirit of where we are going into the new phase of CAADP, that we're going to be tracking and understanding where investments are going. So your readiness and explanation is much welcome, Dominic. Let me go to my dear good friend, Dr. Sanjo. And I'm interested in you, Sanjo, for a number of reasons. I read your title as the Director of Social Development and the National Convener of the Food Systems, but also from the Ministry of Finance, Budget, Planning of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Very, very interested because we know there is a lot of debate between Ministries of Agriculture, Environment, Health, and where you see it in terms of budget allocations, where the drivers of growth are coming from. What is the experience and how do you think this instrument becomes so helpful in a big country like Nigeria, where we know it's also a federal state and also a state that has, the country that has states. Really, really interested in hearing your story.
Yeah, thank you very much. The first instance, you have corrected the first one. I'm the National Convener for Nigeria. I'm also the Director for Social Development in the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. And we have been demerged from the Ministry of Finance. Finance is standing alone now. Yes, but my ministry is in charge of budget and planning. So that makes it, I'm being the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning by the provision of the Constitution, while we coordinate all sectors, all the federal sectors. Then we also coordinate the state that is subnational. We have an arrangement that brings all the state governors to a meeting every month. Every month, we call it National Council and National Economic Council, which is being chaired by the Vice President of Nigeria. And all the governors are expected to be in attendance in that meeting so that there be a review of what has gone, whatever the state is doing. So that just by the way, in Nigeria, we after the 2021 presentation of pathways, we commenced the implementation right away, and the implementation was actually not limited to federal level. We made sure that that's why I pick a lot of interest in the presentation by Kenya, in terms of their readiness. So Nigeria also has that arrangement that is carrying all the 36 states from the federal capital along in the implementation. And what we did was now to develop an implementation strategy, a strategy that was developed by all the 36 states plus federal capital and the federal FDs. About 14 federal FDs are involved in food and nutrition. And then my ministry, being the coordinating ministry for the economy, is actually the coordinating ministry for nutrition. So, we have the national policy on nutrition. We also have the food system pathways and the strategy, which was actually spearheaded by my ministry in terms of development. But it's in preparation for the 3 FCs. I can assure you that we are not only looking at tracking, but we are also looking at how can governments at all levels be committed to investing in food system. So, and the commitment to investment in food system requires having budget line for food system. Now, budget line at the federal level has actually been, encouraged. Even at the state level now, almost all the states of federation are already creating budget line for food system, apart from budget line for nutrition. But what we are trying to do is to encourage them to actually marry nutrition, budget line for nutrition with that of budget line for food system. Because the arrangement we are making in the implementation of the food system at the subnational level and at federal now is to look at what we work with all the key critical MDAs that are involved so that there will be collaboration. In the presentation by Nadine, she was actually saying something on the food supply, food availability, climate issue, and some other things. So then we're also looking at social investment. So what we are trying to do is to encourage all the state of federation now to have a steering committee of food system that will be chaired by the Commissioner for Economic Planning, so that they will be able to and be co-chaired by the Commissioner for Agriculture, for Food Supply, Commissioner for Health for healthy diet and nutrition, Commissioner for Education to promote homegrown school feeding system and encourage school gardening, because we want to encourage the dignity of labor in us and encourage school agriculture, so that everybody will see the reason why food is key in everything. And then another good thing that the federal government of Nigeria has done, the government has actually created another ministry, the Ministry of Livestock, so that it will enhance the value chain, the promotion of the value chain in terms of both the livestock promotion and the dairy, and increasing the production of dairy products. And that's one of the principal reasons why it was. But for the sake of what we are discussing now, I want to let us know that the ministry, we are ready, because there has been series of engagements with the key stakeholders in Nigeria, the UN system, I mean, particularly the FAO, IFAD, the UNICEF, WFP, again, too. I mean, then IFAD, AGRA, they have been coming around. We have been discussing. We have discussed a lot of framework that will enable us to, do this these 3F successfully in Nigeria. And we have the opportunity of having a national tax team that is actually thinking on how best can we implement food system national strategy for food system in Nigeria, because the 17 recommendations that we presented during the 2021 summit, we have actually developed a strategy of implementation that will enable us have a sort of systematic arrangement in implementation that will cover every aspect of, particularly this issue of environment, climate change. We also, Nigeria is also a member of the local food supply resilient group, which we are trying to encourage all other African countries to join, because the local food is very, very critical, and the resilience is very important. And even the food system requires resilience. If we are talking of the food system, we are not limiting it to agriculture alone. And that's the area where most of us are making a lot of mistakes. The limiting food system to agriculture is actually undermining the importance of food system to actually solve the problem of, the go-to by the year 2030. So as a country, we have developed a dashboard, food system dashboard. We have also developed a nutrition dashboard. So all these are considered to be a good infrastructure that will support the 3Fs by the time we develop it as a country. We are actually interested in tracking resources that is flowing into food system, our top sector. Food system is both a multi-sectoral and intersectoral. It's a multi-stakeholder and inter-stakeholders. So we need to work together to make sure that every component, every aspect of the food value chain, and whatever it requires to actually achieve a balance in sustaining our food system, and is critical. And data and information is critical. Financial data is critical. Financial data will help the government to know where to go and what next. It will also support the development partners to see where, can they specifically support the country, and to what extent are the country actually maximizing the utilization of even the resources that is being provided by the development partner to achieve value for money, just like Dr. Kalibata said earlier. So we are looking at the prioritization of the investment in food system in such a way that it can be tracked and we can generate enough data that will support policy making and the food system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And especially the role of planning. It also fits into your planning as a function
exactly.
And as a ministry.
Why we are looking at, we are also looking at how to galvanize resources.
Yep, absolutely.
The local resources. The federal government alone cannot do it.
Yep.
For instance, the federal government of Nigeria in 2024 increased budgetary allocation to agriculture. So about Naira, if I say it in Naira, it may be difficult.
Yeah.
But but at the same time, in 2025 now, it's now doubled, 100%.
Okay.
It's multiplied. Okay. So then our concern mostly is how can government at all level increase investments?
Yeah.
And how can they plan for whatever they want to do in such a way that it can be tracked and we can also generate report for whatever investment that is made into food
So
system.
tracking investment in the food system is also very critical. It's a planning function, it's a budget function, and we really appreciate your expose in that. I think we need to conclude this segment and go into the closing session. We've had enough. Thank you so much for the coordination efforts that you are putting in place in your respective countries. Rwanda, we are aware of that very strong work you're doing, bringing different ministries together, but also making sure that the understanding where resources are going is very critical for you to be able to know where do you deploy more resources, where do you reallocate, where do you maximize investment, and therefore be able to really track the transformation that we're talking about. Thanks so much to their panel, and applause to them. A clap of hands for the panelists. And then we can take our seats and we go into a closing session. And I'm happy to invite, Dr. Usman has just left, and we just, oh, okay. The representative of the Academia 2033 on behalf of Usman, you can make a few closing remarks, and then we'll be going to the final closing from IFAD. So if you can give us a few closing remarks, and then we'll go into the final one.
Yes. Thank you, Boaz. I'm just representing Usman, and my name is Gaitau Tadessa. I work for Academia 2063 as a director for the operational support department. So thank you, everybody, and especially ministers and representatives from Ethiopia, Rwanda, Nigeria, and Benin. And we are really happy to have you here. And we have learned a lot from the presentation as well as from the discussions, the panel discussion. So I think there are a lot of important points that have been raised. And as Usman said, finance is important for everything, but it's not a solution for everything. And also, the president of AGRA, she said that the value of money, that's where we need data, and we need analysis, analytics. So this is just a contribution from a different institution, IFAD, AGRA, Academia 2063, World Bank, and all, they again contribute for these things. So we'll work on that. We are research organizations. So we'll try to, scale up all these important tools. And as you have said it, we have to contextualize it, and we have to make it more specific for the different policy priorities of the different countries and all these things. So with this small remark, I want to also thank Boaz for your nice coordination and handling all those issues, and Nadine for your presentations and all those things. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to have you all here, and wish you good luck.
Thank you so much. Now, finally, I have the honor and privilege to invite Mrs. Sarah Mbago, the Regional Director, East and Southern Africa for IFAD, to really make our last closing remarks. And after that, we'll be able to adjourn the session. Thank you so much, and you're welcome, Madam Sarah.
Thank you very much, Boaz. And really, it's an honor and a privilege for me to be the last speaker in this distinguished panel. I think I meant to, and I think my colleague Nadine has said, to try and advocate the use of the 3FS tool. I think we've seen the richness, the value, what it brings to stakeholders, and how it informs decision-making around investments, which is absolutely key. And all I would like to emphasize at this point is, what did this session really bring us to? I think we've heard from Nigeria, we've heard from Rwanda, Benin, Kenya, and other countries. But what I really take away personally is that we can't continue with business as usual. We simply cannot. We saw a very impactful picture of where we're investing in Africa, in conflict and fragility, which is important to reduce suffering of Africans around the continent. But how do we really start shifting the gears and investing in transformation? And I think this is what is important now. I take away what the professor said in terms of recommendations. We really need to see how viable, through the tracking that we're doing, the investments we're making in transformation. I think the ministers from Rwanda, from Nigeria, Ethiopia alluded to that. Without the necessary returns on investment, we will not shift and we will not transform. So this is just a call from IFAD and from all the other stakeholders here, again, Academia 2063, the World Bank, all the other stakeholder groups, is to inform going forward for the next 10 years, How are we going to shift the investments? Which 11 countries, apparently they are a collective of 11 countries across Africa that if you invest in along landscapes, I heard that word, I heard investment in land tenure, I heard investments in food safety, I heard investments in all the other places and areas that we don't normally invest in. This is where we need to go. It needs to be urgent. I was very excited to understand that logistics infrastructure is also very key in food systems transformation, and it's not only on-farm investments. So how do we transition and shift the system? And I'm excited that this tool will allow us to have the data, have the evidence, and make decisions. So for me and all the stakeholders here, I just want to thank you all and encourage you to line up for the 3FS tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for withering the time and being with us. It has been a very successful session. It's time now to go and get the tool rolled out in all the countries that are remaining. Thank you.